Film is making its world premiere at South by Southwest. Can you tell us about Puro and the inspiration behind it?
Sure. Pure O is a film about it's autobiographical.
Yeah.
It's based on my life, but it's based on an aspiring screenwriter and musician who has to grapple with pure O, which is pure obsessional. It's a form of OCD that only has a mental manifestation, and he's kind of coming to grips with a diagnosis. And then it's also much more universal than that, and it goes into his life and it's a story about mental health and how it also affects people around him in his life. And it's about somebody kind of going through their darkest hour and battling a Puro diagnosis.
Film is bringing much needed awareness to OCD and how it's often misrepresented in film and television. And we see that reflected in the protagonist's journey when he's initially diagnosed. Why do you think media has continued to perpetuate these misconceptions? And why was it so important for you to reshape this narrative?
Well, knowledge is power, and I just think that I don't fault anybody. I just think that it's really misunderstood. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't sit here and pass judgment on anybody because me is I had late onset, so I was going into my 30s when I got diagnosed with it, and I had no idea. I mean, I had no idea this was a thing, and I realized that so many people within the therapeutic community, there's so many therapists out there that don't really understand pure O. The average length of time somebody's in therapy before in talk therapy, because talk therapy makes it worse, is sometimes up to 8 years. People are just stuck
Mm.
in talk therapy, thinking that they're needing to talk about their stuff, and it's just making it worse because they're just compulsing and they're obsessing about something, and they're not actually getting better, and they're making it worse. So even within the own community that deals with this, it's sort of misunderstood. So to have the expectation that the general public's going to understand it is I think a tough ask, which is a huge reason for why I made the film. You know, I want it to be entertaining first and foremost, and I always deal in universal themes, and I wanted it to be about
Yeah.
um, you know be about a lot more than just mental health. But I also did want to be subversive, and I wanted to sort of paint a picture of what this really looks like when somebody's dealing with therapy and dealing with this diagnosis, and show people what this is, to just destigmatize it and to show it. Because I think when you hear about what Puro is, it sounds really intense, and it is. Sufferers of OCD, it's a struggle, it's debilitating at times, but ultimately OCD attacks the things that you love most. And so typically those people with OCD have such beautiful brains, and they're such beautiful. I found that out in the group therapy, that so people are so
Mm.
empathetic. That's a common theme, is empathy, and people
Yeah.
just feel so strongly. And that's what happens, is that you're having these intrusive thoughts that are completely against your own sense of self identity. And so the reason it is because the people who are in there have such a strong self identity about being empathetic people and caring and all these things, so that when you have these thoughts, whether it's pedophilia OCD or harm OCD or whatever it is, I mean, it's just thoughts. It's not, and that's the first rule of treating OCD, is that the content doesn't matter. The thoughts are, it has nothing to do with the thoughts. There's no such thing as OCD thoughts. They're just human thoughts. The
Mm.
OCD comes from misinterpreting those thoughts, and sort of the flaw within your cognitive, um, of your cognitive, you're not able to cognitively restructure um, the thoughts in a proper way. You have all these cognitive distortions that are at play with an OCD brain, but the thoughts themselves are just human. We all have them.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I really did want to be subversive, and I did want to show, and I hope that it holds up. In the process before I made the film, within the script process, I had therapists read the script, and I obviously have my own experience, but I wanted it to be true to life. So where everything that happens in the film is just true to how this thing is. So people, I would love that. If people see this film and they're able to sort of see parts of themselves up on the screen, I hope that somebody who's sitting there suffering in talk therapy is able to see a film like this and to recognize aspects of themselves. And then they're
Mm.
able to go into with their own therapist and maybe bring it up and say, like, hey, I saw this movie and it kind of hit close to home. It feels like this might
Yeah.
be a thing. What do you think? Like, can we talk about it? If I can, if this film can help anybody get the help they need, that would be the biggest win for me.
Great answer. And there's so many standout performances by the ensemble. As you were writing these characters, did you have these particular actors in mind? What was that casting process like?
Not from the writing process. No, I don't tend to write like that. I tend to just focus on story, and I don't tend to think of actors in mind when I'm writing stuff. But very quickly after, I'm fortunate in the fact that I went to drama school and I've been an actor for almost 20 years, and I've gotten to know so many talented individuals that I started to really just think about it because I was casting the film myself, and I just started to think about everybody I know, and think about different people that would be good for different roles. And I also had a unique plan with the casting, and I casted a real life couple to play the leads in the
Yeah.
film. um, the lead actress's parents are a real life couple, so there's two real life couples. And then I also casted in non-actors in the therapy group, so there's real life OCD patients who aren't actors. And at the drug and alcohol rehab that the character works at, there's real life counselors that aren't actors. So I definitely had a plan with how I wanted to cast it and what I wanted to do, but in terms of specifics within the role, I didn't quite have that. I was sort of piecing that together after the fact, after I wrote the script.
And the film really highlights the strength and vulnerability. And as a filmmaker, how were you able to create this space and environment for your cast to explore those different topics and those universal themes? And how beneficial was it for you having worked in front of the camera as an actor for 20 years as well?
Oh, super beneficial. I mean, what did I do? I mean, I just tried to. I told all my actors, I said, listen, my keyword is unsentimental. I want to be unsentimental with the material. I just want to present it as is. I
Mm,
want to try to take as little of as a viewpoint and a judgment as possible. And I want to just show people this is what happened. So I asked them to bring as much of themselves as possible, going with the theme of the project: vulnerability, courage, all that thing.
yeah.
I challenged them to try to find where the character and themselves were the most aligned, and to try to lean into that and to bring as much of themselves as not actors but as humans, and to be wary of acting and to stay away from acting or sort of delivering any kind of message or I just wanted them to sort of to be as naturalistic as possible is what we're going for. And so I told them if they would do that, that I would try to set up everything for performance first, because that's my taste and that's what I like in film as well. So everything that I did as a director, and I worked with my cinematographer to really just light the space and to not light the individual actors. I wanted to light the space and let them move. If it called for it and it was right, I wanted them to have them freed up to maybe improv in and out of scenes a little bit if it called for it. If they were looking at some piece of language and it didn't feel right on their tongue and they feel like they might say something that had the same intention but say it differently, I wanted to encourage them to follow that. So that's all I did, is I just tried to create I tried to create just the creative play box for them to come in and to just do their thing, and sort of just like set up the rules of engagement for them in a way that allowed them to feel free. We shot the entire film handheld. That was a choice, and that was to like also create a movement for the actors so that we could follow them around and have the space lit. So everything I do as a director in a film, especially with a film like this where you're going for such a naturalistic tone, I
Yeah.
really wanted to set it up to just allow my actors the space to let their performances be at the forefront of what we were doing.
You also wrote, directed, produced, and edited this film. Did anything surprise you about the experience? What was the biggest takeaway that you learned about your craft?
Oh my crap. I learned that I think that it's just really well suited when there's a cohesion. Obviously, film is an incredibly collaborative art form, and it takes so many people bringing different things. But I do think that there's something about having kind of one through line of somebody's perspective from beginning to end on a film that I think is adds a cohesion, like a natural cohesion to it, where things don't have to be lost in translation and me trying to communicate my vision to an editor or communicate my vision in certain ways, that having me sort of manage that from beginning to end, I just think solidified my viewpoint that that's what I want to continue to do as a director, and I think that it's really well served for the film as a whole when you have just that through line.
Yeah. I got one final question for you. You're also a singer-songwriter, and you were able to incorporate your own music during a pivotal time in your life into this film. Why was that
Mhm.
so important to you and the overall authenticity of this project?
Yeah, well, obviously it's an autobiographical film, and the whole project itself is incredibly meta. But I think that the characters that are kind of based on my life uh, are musicians, and they're playing music, and so I could sit there. I intentionally chose music that I was writing at that point in my life because I there's no way I'm going to be able to go back and recreate that as well as I
Mhm.
possibly could have when I was writing it in the middle of it. So I wanted to highlight that because um, I'm not necessarily a confessional songwriter, but there's something in the language and the things that I was speaking to at that point that were very unique to what I was experiencing in my life that came through. And so it was just it was the right choice. I felt like for the film to highlight that. It's almost as though the language and the songs that are in the film almost present as like an inner narrative to the character and where his head's at
Yeah.
throughout the film. So those were in there from the first draft. I intentionally was very specific with the writing and the songs that I chose to go in there because they work as almost like internal monologues for the character, like almost a diary for the character
Yeah.
as the film's going along.